Once upon a time, Ruth and James were sitting on their back porch in the Barossa Valley, and Ruth turned to James and said, "James, I think we should move to Adelaide. I think we should be closer to the kids, be closer to services, live on a flat block and build a beautiful, sustainable home." And James said, "That's a good idea." Actually, I don't know if that was true or not, but it was pretty true. That was pretty much what happened, I'm sure. The brief for this job was, I do have to go back, there we go. The brief for this job looked a bit like that. And we've done a lot of projects for early retirees, and so we enjoy working with that sort of, that type of client, I guess, because generally they know what they want, and they've got quite a lot of experience in living in homes, and so it's a really lovely thing to work in a team where you're delivering something that is going to really assist somebody in ageing in place. So the block that Ruth and James bought was this one. I won't go into the pros and cons of knocking over an old house and like demolishing and rebuilding or renovating. Perhaps that could come up in a Q&A or a chat afterwards. But it was our brief to knock over and rebuild. So it was a decent sized block, a nice flat block, with a lot of lawn and a lot of concrete paths. And interestingly, a sort of a veranda sunroom on the back that gets enclosed, and because that was facing north, so it was actually the nicest place on the block to sit. So we sort of took that as a bit of a cue. So the site plan looks like this. There's the house. There's the existing house. So we are building a house that's a little bit bigger, but we managed to push it forward to the street as much as possible. Garage on the boundary. Living areas that address not only north and the solar access, but also the visual connection to the garden. Services on the east and on the west. We had to have some western rooms, and so we've got very, very deep overhang there, and some screening that is actually working really, really nicely. Some green wall screening. The hot water system, we managed to get all of the services inside the floor plate, pretty close to the hot water system. So it is a pretty efficient sort of floor plan. So the floor plan itself is as such. As I said, there's the solar access in from the north. The blue lines just indicate where all of the cross ventilation is. Ruth and James were very keen to run this house as passively as possible. Whilst there is a small air conditioning system, it rarely gets used, and so they're actually very keen to sail this ship themselves as much as they could. So they're forever monitoring temperature and wind and opening up windows, and they do get a huge amount of solar access from that northern aspect. The house is also designed in two zones. You can see the red and the blue there. Now, Ruth and James can essentially live in that red section, but part of the brief was that there was to be provision for future-proofing for a live-in carer or potentially a family member. So that is that section at the front, the 2 bedrooms and bathroom, is actually a separate unit, or can be a separate unit. So it's 198 square metres for the house. And quite a large garage that you can drive through to the backyard. There's still access to the backyard and lots of storage. Just a little bit on the solar stuff. I mean, most people would be over this, but it is actually always nice to see what happens in the winter. So this is 21st of June. That's the sort of solar ingress onto the floor plate, and then of course in summer we've got no sun getting into that floor plate at all, just with the eaves. But today is just a great example. Here we are, 1st of May, and it's hot. We're getting a lot of sun. So there's these middle months, these shoulder months, that are actually going to become increasingly increasingly difficult to manage. So Ruth and James were all over that, and we talked a lot about what to do. That's the reality of that face now. So there's some terrific, we call it pergola ridge, On the north, you can see the shade cloth there until the growies grow, the deciduous vines, and they've also got an operable shade structure. So they've created this grey space in between inside and outside, and it's working really, really beautifully. Just a very quick thing on Good House ingredients. It's all very standard. Happy to run you through the details if you're interested. But we use a waffle pod slab, which does decouple the slab to an extent from the ground, meaning that the thermal mass is working for the internal spaces. Oversized timber frame with ventilated air gap under cladding, R4 insulation in the walls, R6 in the ceiling. This is a pretty standard Good House, so you can get a very good sense of how that feels inside on Sunday if you're interested. The performance of this is good. It's under 5 kilowatt hours per day, which is pretty typical for our homes. So the PV system is 5.5 kilowatts, and Ruth and James bought each other an 11 kilowatt battery for their birthdays last year, which I thought was probably one of the best birthday presents I've ever heard of. And they're now essentially, we're obviously going to be getting that data in over the next few years, but we're essentially seeing that that's going to offset all energy use. So it's entirely possible to do that now with the house battery and a high performance home. So I just want to reiterate that, you know, Good House is really only part of this story. Ruth and James recognise that they're part of a greater system here, and they did their research. They contacted us to assist them in this building element, but their overall picture was about regenerating the site. It's about biodiversity and produce from the garden, minimising water use. It was also about lifestyle and just generally being efficient, so being closer to places, walking more, having permeable front gates and fences so you can talk to people as they walk past. So it's just a lovely story about how they wanted to develop their life in their senior years. So that's the site there. You can see the gardens really starting to come up. Is the fence. And then the inside, the connection to the outside is just stunning. You'll probably walk home with some lemons. Thank you.